Hi, I'm a chair for Marathon Mates. Like it or not, we all have some form of love hate relationship with running up and down hills. On this episode, we are going to share our top tips on how you can run better up and down hills. Are you ready to run? Let's go!
Welcome to the thrilling world of the Flying Runr, brought to you by the Marathon Mates.
Hi everyone, I'm Lucia and welcome to episode 84 of the Flying Runr. On this episode, we are going to be talking about hills. We'll share our tips and tricks to help you get up and over those mounds of opportunity. We come across plenty of hills every time we lace up our shoes. We'll talk about how positive mindset helps, as well as talk about some of the techniques we use. But just before we do that, as usual, I'm joined by my co-host this week, Tony and Tim. Tony, and from Team Ellis, Tara and Tim. Guys, how's everyone this week?
Fantastic.
Doing really well.
Yeah, we're really good. Had a good week, so yeah, can't complain.
Good. Now, guys, just before I ask how you've all been going, just a little bit more. A few weeks ago, we were asked by one of our listeners on our training strategies. Now, Tara and I, we've shared ours. So this week, Tim, let's hear about your current training strategy.
Thanks, Lucia. I guess I'm looking at 3 marathons in 3 months in the middle of the year. So my strategy, and this largely remains the same, whether I'm in heavy training for 1 marathon, 3 marathons, or just half marathons. I have my long run on a Sunday, and the Sunday run varies in distance, and I'll talk a little bit about that towards the end. But Sunday's my long run. Monday's generally my rest day. It's when I travel from Brisbane down to the Gold Coast. I do a full day's work, and then I do a podcast, this one. So generally there's not much time spare for me to do much else. So rest day, Monday. Tuesday, I'll typically do 6K easy leg loosener is what I call it, run on a Tuesday morning. And that's just to turn the legs over and get them moving again after a day of rest and after the long run on Sunday. I have a run club that we've established at work, and on a Tuesday night, I'll run at Run Club, and generally that's again fairly easy. I'll run at the back of the pack, helping newcomers into running to learn to run and to teach them the joy of running a little bit. It's not coaching. I don't have the accreditation for coaching, but it's more about helping people do it. It's a 4 kilometer long loop, so generally I'll run 1 loop with them. If anyone wants to do a second loop, I might do a second loop, just depending on how I'm feeling. Wednesday's my speed day, so I'll do 6 kilometers, but I'll aim to try and do it at a fairly fast pace. And then Thursday's generally a rest day. Friday's a 3/4 pace run for me. Park run usually is on a Saturday, and I try to run a fast one on Saturdays at Park run. And then it comes back to long run on Sunday, where I'm trying to run on tired legs after the fast run the day before. Now, I mentioned before my strategies, 3 marathons in 3 months in the middle of the year. So my current strategy was in January, I wanted every long run that I did in January. So 1 long run a week was going to be 21 Ks for each of those long runs. And then I step it up, and I've talked about it before, that we step up, Tara and I, in 3 kilometer increments, which for us is running out an extra hour and 1.5 Ks and turning around, which equates to us somewhere around about 8 to 10 minutes extra of running before you turn around and come back. So this month, being February, I'm looking to do 24 Ks run on every long run. In March, I'll do 27 Ks on every long run. In April, I'll do 30 Ks in every long run. And then May, I have a 30 kilometer race at the start of May. And then I'll do a couple of long runs in 33, 36 Ks before I start my taper at the end of May, early June, as I go into Brisbane Marathon, then Gold Coast Marathon, and then Sydney Marathon. So that's my normal running routine and my running strategy. And then on top of that, throw in some stretch sessions where I try to stretch most nights when I'm at home in front of the TV. I try to get out on the floor and stretch and touch my toes and stretch out my back and hamstrings. That might only be 10, 15 minutes at a time. And then if I'm feeling good on a Wednesday night, I might go and do a weight session as well. I'm fortunate I have a gym session here on my in the unit where I live here on Monday to Friday. So I go down there and throw a few weights around. And that's a typical sort of a week for me.
Excellent. Thanks, Tim. So now back to our usual chats about how's everyone's week been. Tony, how's your week been?
I had a very ordinary week, to be quite honest. I had a fair bit of stress going on with some deadlines that I had to nail, and that showed. And I felt that energy sort of go from my body. So I had an interval session on Wednesday night, I believe, or was it Tuesday night? One of those nights. And I'd actually mapped out a 500-meter course at down the road in a park from my place, which is all well and good if you're doing 500-meter intervals. But I was doing 600-meter intervals. And so I ran the first 500 pretty hard, and I'm thinking the watch has got to be doing something soon because it tells you when your interval's up. And so I've run this straight line from one street to the other, and it hasn't gone. So then I've turned the corner, and then I've started to turn another corner, and then it finally went. And I realized that I'd actually entered in a lift in my intervals. So that sort of threw me. And I ended up only doing 4 intervals, as in, 4 kilometers as opposed to my normal 5 in that session. But in saying that, I actually looked back on it and said, geez, that was pretty quick. And my second and my third ones were actually really good. So just really weird how all of a sudden things don't go as planned. And all of a sudden you're just sort of thinking, oh, what's going on? I was meant to do on my strategy, I wanted to get out and do 12 on Saturday. I didn't get there. I had an upset tummy. It just wasn't feeling it. So I pulled up stumps at around 6.5 in total. So it wasn't a great week, but facing this week with a lot more, I guess, energy. I've made a vow not to have a beer during February. I'd like to go a month free of beer every year, and why not February? It's the shortest month, so it minimises the pain. So, but then the marathon mates, then of course, have booked in a catch-up session halfway through the month, so that'll be interesting and a test of my discipline. But yeah, it wasn't a week that I'm going to sort of feel bad about, and I'm certainly not going to chase the little bit of mileage that I missed, but it was just something for me to think about and reflect on. And at the end of the day, I made the right decision on Saturday. I didn't want to work through with an empty stomach with an upset stomach. And that was it. What about you, Tara?
Hang on, just before we do move on to Team Ellis, Tony, you said you had a bad week, but the T-shirt you're wearing indicates differently.
Yes.
Been waiting for these.
I am so glad you asked, Lucia, and that's a good thing for getting on the podcast early so that we can arrange some things. My Honolulu Big Kahuna package arrived on Tuesday, and I've got the Merry Mile shirt on. For those that aren't listening on video, I've got the Merry Mile shirt on. I've got the start to the park hanging on my little rack there, and I'll just show you very quickly the medals. This is the Merry Mile medal, so it's the smallest one of the 4. And then we go to the start to park medal, which was quite nice. And then we go to, and unfortunately this is a spinner, but broke in transit, so there's a little bit of sticky tape on the back holding it all together. So that's the marathon medal. Nice size, nice heaviness. And then you do the Big Kahuna.
That's a big medal.
Yeah, and that was pretty cool. So really appreciative of the Big Kahuna Virtual Challenge, and maybe next year I can have some more of our listeners do that with me, because it's probably going to be something I do every year just to keep the energy happening in December. The only thing I don't feel great about is the marathon shirt you get is a finisher marathon. And of course, yes. So I ran the marathon in 4 bits, so I don't necessarily feel like a finisher per se, but it's a good shirt. So who knows? Maybe that's what started my bad week, because I put it on and wore it. I don't know. Maybe that bad juju. But thanks for asking, Lucia.
Sorry, Tara, back to you.
Yeah, no worries at all. It's good to see those medals in the shed, because I know how long they've been waited for. This week has been a bit of a weird week for me. I sort of don't know really what I've done. It's been a bit all over the place. I know Wednesday morning, I think I've been doing some my aim this year is to record something on Strava every day. So from January the 1st, I've recorded an activity every single day on Strava, Garmin, whatever, whether that be stretching, yoga, swimming, running, whatever. And so I've been doing a bit of that sort of stuff at the start of the week. And then Tim and I had a late night on Saturday night. So I knew that I probably wouldn't get my long run done on Sunday. And so I did a treadmill run on Wednesday morning because I had some time. And it was the 21K part of the iFit series for the Sydney Marathon. And I ended up with 23 Ks. And I can honestly say, don't run 23 Ks on a treadmill. It's an interesting way to do it. It does keep your pace nice and even. So I was able to run that quite consistently at a 6-minute pace for the whole entire 23 kilometres, which really surprised me actually. But being on a treadmill, you're able to do that a lot easier. And so then I sort of just plodded around. We volunteered at Park Run on Saturday, so we didn't do Park Run, but we volunteered at Bunyaville. And then I was actually feeling like I could run on Sunday, so I ended up doing 18 Ks. So I ended up with 2 long runs this week. Yeah.
Nice one. Tim, sorry, you.
Yeah, no, that's all right. I had a quieter week. I think what I've done is I've met all my targets and goals for January pretty early last week. So I was feeling pretty fatigued at the end of that. I racked up over 180 kilometres of running in January. So my body was feeling a bit tired and sore at the end of the week. Hadn't had a massage for quite some time. So Saturday was all about me. I started off with volunteering at Parkrun, which I love to do. And I think that was my 69th occasion of volunteering at Parkrun. And then scooted off from Parkrun, went to the doctor for my annual medical every year. Everything's all good there. I just had to get a couple of skin cancers burned off my face, or precursors to skin cancers. So there they are. So do yourself a favor, if you're running in the sun all the time like we do, make sure you get your skin checks done. Then I went out for a massage with Wayne Cooley on Saturday afternoon, and then followed it off with a nice date night out with Tara on Sunday. On Saturday night, before then heading off to do 24 Ks on Sunday, nice and easy, to start my February tally again. So yeah, last week was just a quieter week. Didn't do a lot of midweek running, but just a lot of fun towards the end of the week, focusing on me, which sometimes you need to do.
Excellent. So for last week was a bit of a quieter week, but the Ks are starting to ramp up. So normally I do run club on Tuesday, Thursday, but last week I skipped Tuesday just because of the disaster I had coming back from Melbourne. Came back late. I'm like, no, I need sleep. Strength class on Wednesday, run club, which is hills, on a Thursday. I managed to get to my run club on Saturday, which I don't always get to do. Ran with one of the girls at the back of the pack. Poor thing was struggling, so anytime she wanted to walk, we walked. She goes, Luch, you can go. But for me, it's about encouraging them to keep them going. Like when it comes to run club on a Saturday, I'm not fussed about my time at all. And then I did a long run on Sunday, 10 Ks. I'm back in the double digits.
So Can I just ask a couple of things? One of Tony and one of you, Lucia. Firstly, for you, Lucia, is that a pre or a launch, or where are you up to in your
It's a
training program?
It's a pre-launch.
A pre-launch. And Tony, your week last week, was that a launch week? But was it a firecracker or was it a rocket ship for a launch? It sounds like it was more like a firecracker.
Maybe a sparkler.
No, it was. I'm supposed to be in the honeymoon period of the training program. You know, weeks 2 and 3 are honeymoon. So, but it certainly didn't feel like a honeymoon. So,
I still don't believe this pre-week stuff. Hey.
Yeah.
and just to address that once again, the articles on our website that are now there around the stages of the marathon was our most visited page during the week. And the one that deals exclusively with the pre-week was second. So I think that there is, while Tim, you're entitled to your opinion, there are some people that are thinking, well, maybe there's something in this. Now, I can't back that up with performance because in week 2 of the training block, all of a sudden I stuff things up. But I think the bigger question that I've seen in a lot of the groups this week has been, do you count up in a training block, as in start from week 1 and then marathon week becomes week 16? Or do you count down so that the race week is week 1? So there's another discussion just for our listeners to have. Do you count up or do you count down?
I count up.
I count up.
I don't count weeks.
I just do whatever Tim tells me to do.
So that's all the word from the training blocks this week.
Now, and before we get into any more discussion about pre-training blocks or anything like that, now it's that time of the week where we talk about the news. Now, Tim, what's been happening around the world of running over the past few weeks?
Thanks, Lucia. I'm really getting excited. London Marathon's coming up, as is Tokyo. Tokyo's coming up in a couple of weeks' time, but I'm really getting excited about London Marathon. Andy Buchanan, Australia's fastest marathon runner, has come out this week saying that he is no longer running scared as he aims to go even faster since his first race back after setting the Australian men's marathon record back in Valencia at the end of last year. His time last year of 2:06:22 lowered the previous mark by more than 1 minute from Brett Robinson, who set it 2 years earlier. And in London, you're going to see Andy Buchanan and Brett Robinson and Jack Rayner from Australia all competing together, trying to push that Australian record even further down. So I'm really excited. I think this is a race within a race. And Brett has sort of said since setting the record in Valencia, he spent a long part of that race in Valencia doubting himself, thinking, what am I doing? Why am I running this fast? And questioning whether or not he could actually do it. He said that since breaking the record, he now has a belief and he's more confident and excited to do more. There's still more untapped potential there over the marathon distance, and it's going to come pretty easy through that self-belief. So Andy Buchanan and Brett Robinson have spent most of January in the Australian Alps training at altitude and pushing each other to new heights. They're great friends off the track, and but both say that they know they can beat each other and want to beat each other. So, guys, how good is this to hear two Australians, particularly Andy Buchanan, out there telling people he's excited to run faster, and particularly in London? How awesome is this?
Oh, it's absolutely fantastic. And then also to add another great result over the weekend, Izzy Bat-Doyle broke the women's Australian half marathon record, which has stood for 20-something years, I believe it was.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was at the Kagawa Marugame International Half Marathon. And at that same race, Andy Buchanan ran 1 hour flat, 28 seconds, 1 hour and 28 seconds for the half. A newcomer that I hadn't heard of, Haftu Strintos. I think I've said that right. Strintos. He's an Ethiopian Australia. He ran 1 hour and 36 seconds. And Brett Robinson, 1 hour, 1 minute and 58. So just under 1 hour and 2 for the half. Interesting, when you look at the places, Buchanan came 7th in that race with his time. Huftu came 12th with his time. And Brett Robinson came 79th. So there was that many runners in between in that minute and a half. There was the difference between Brett and Andy. So, yeah, I'm excited. It's going to be a great race in Tokyo.
In London.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
All right. There's the next bit of news there, guys, is around Eliud Kipchoge. And we know that when Eliud talks, the rest of the world listens. And this past week, he's spoken to the media and has said that his focus is entirely on doing well in London Marathon, which is great to hear. We know that this year he's returning to the course in London for the first time in 5 years as he aims to win his 5th title in London. Lots of people out there, including ourselves on this podcast, have been speculating about his future and questioning how much longer he can go and keep running at that ultra elite level. Asked by the media whether winning London could cap off his career, Kipchoge didn't offer much other than, "I don't like to mix some things up. I learned to put all my mind on the road, put all my mind on making sure my muscles are lean and ready to combat the London streets, and the rest will come." He's insisted that he'll only be persuaded to retire when he sees the whole world lacing up their running shoes. So again, guys, this is great news to hear that Kipchoge's focused. He's got that tiger in his belly, I guess, to really push hard and go fast. I hope he does come back, and I hope he really does achieve it. We know what has happened in the last few races. Boston was a failure for him in his mindset. The Paris Olympics was definitely a failure in his mindset as well. I'm hoping that he can come back in London, have a really good race, and have a few more runs left in him before he does ultimately retire from that elite sort of level. I'd hate to see him keep going and failing and tarnishing his career with all these opportunities by going too far or too long within his running. So hopefully, his fingers crossed, we get to see a good result there from him. The third bit of news I've got there is about Helen Obiri. Helen is the reigning champion in Boston. In fact, she's won it the last 2 years in Boston. And this year she is looking to have a crack at the very rare three-peat by winning Boston this year in about 9 weeks' time. Over the last week or so, she's admitted that she's starting to feel the pressure ahead of a title defense. To combat this, she is working around the clock to ensure that her training is fully focused on the event leading right up to the start line on Patriots Day. She has identified 3 key runners who she'll be keeping a very close eye on during the race. They are Amane Berezo, who finished second to Helen at the 2023 Boston Marathon. Edna Kipchoge, who is a veteran and knows how to win over that distance. And Irene Cheptai, an upcoming star of marathon racing. So they're the 3 people she said she's feeling the pressure from. But she says that under pressure, that she is under pressure because she's looking at the entries of the women. They are all very strong. We have a strong field of Kenyans, Ethiopians, and Americans. She knows that she will be the hunted and that everyone will be looking at her. Helen says that this pressure is helping her in her training. In Kenya, you have to be in top shape to be included in any Kenyan team. And if I'm selected, I will always do my best. So I love watching Helen run. I love seeing her do well, and I love to see her do well in Boston. I'd love to see her get that three-peat. It is very rare. There's not many people that have done a three-peat in Boston. And to me, that'd be very history-making. I don't know what you guys think about that.
I think it would be quite cool to see a female achieve what hasn't been done before.
Yep. 100%.
Yeah, I think very well deserved if she achieves it. She's been one of those names that have been around the marathon block. We are just so blessed with the current state of female marathon running. There is just some quality there. So, and they're all going to have their names on something. And I think Helen deserves that three-peat for Boston.
I agree. All right, guys, and that's the news this week.
Also, just one thing I want to add, not news, but just a public service announcement for anyone that's thinking of applying to be a pacer for Sydney Marathon. Applications are open. The applications close on the 14th of February, and you'll be notified by February 28th if you are successful. I've been lucky. I have paced Sydney before, and it is an amazing experience to help people achieve what some people think is not achievable. I think for me, the highlight when I paced it in 23 was when I crossed the finish line. I had 2 people with me. They cried. They cried as they crossed the finish line. I was like, yes, job done. But it was just amazing just seeing the emotion of what you can do to help people. So, yeah, so just a side note, if anyone is thinking of applying, applications are open and they close on the 14th of February.
So just a question on that, Luch, do you have to be registered already to put your hand up, or is it for people outside of already registered runners?
It doesn't actually indicate because I have submitted my application, but I already have an entry. But I dare say, yeah, I don't want to speculate if you do or if you don't, but it doesn't state anything. But if any of the listeners do have questions on their Facebook and Instagram sites, there is a contact email.
Yep.
Which you can ask.
Can I just ask one more question on that one, Luch? Do you have to live in Sydney to do the pacing?
Nope.
Okay. Because I know that they do pacing training runs. That's all. So I was just checking.
Yeah. I remember the year I did it. If you didn't live in Sydney, you had to do, well, all pacers had to do a shift at the expo. So, and that is non-negotiable. But I remember last year they had a lot of international pacers. Yeah. So you don't need to be living in Sydney to apply to be a pacer.
Cool.
So that's it for the news. So now it's time we go on to our main topic. Now, this one does cause a bit of not controversy amongst our panelists as such, but it is one of our fast 7 questions if you prefer running up or downhill. Tara and Tony, they're down. I'm a bit mixed. I don't mind up or down, but Tim is an uphill man all the way. So what I thought we'd do with the next part is we're going to split it into 2, guys. So just some tips on running downhill. So I'm going to hand it over to Tim first.
Oh, okay. That's good. Running downhill, I don't know much about other than I try not to make up too much time running downhill personally myself. I use the downhills as my time to rest, largely because I attack the uphills. So I attack the uphills often knowing that there's a downhill section afterwards. So I feel in my mind if I'm racing people or if I'm trying to go a faster time, I'll get more gain running faster up a hill than I will if I go fast or cruise down a hill. So for me, I use the downhill as more of a time to check myself, get my breathing under control, slow things down a little bit to reset before I take on whatever else it is, whether it's trying to get back onto a consistent pace on a flat section or it's again attacking the next hill. So for me, it's not about that. I guess you can also be careful or need to be careful that if you are going too fast down a hill, you can actually have the legs and the body and gravity take effect where momentum takes over and you're not actually in control. And in those situations, it's when you can get injured, you can fall over, you can trip over something. So for me, it's about slowing it back, leaning back a little bit, just putting the brakes on, just getting the breath back and slowing it down and resetting generally after you've been up a big hill. That's where I go. That's my sort of philosophy with it to begin with.
Excellent. Tara, what about yourself?
Yeah, I 100% agree with what Tim said there. It's a great way to use the downhills as your recovery time because usually when you're going down a hill, sometimes you've just come up a hill to go down that hill. But even if you aren't, it is a really good chance for you just to check yourself and let your body know what it's doing and just get back into touch with your breathing because you don't need to speed up your cadence or anything like that. Keep your cadence the same. I know personally, especially with trail running, spreading your legs a little bit wider and just moving your body with the trails. Downhill with the roads, it's the same. Don't try and keep your legs underneath your hips too much. Just spread them out just a little bit. It just gives you that little bit more balance, especially if they're a steeper downhill. I know personally myself, I have come down on a trail, coming down too fast on a hill and broken my elbow and smashed up my face. So it is quite dangerous if you are going too fast down a hill because you don't have that ability to stop in a hurry. So use your downs as a more of a recovery time. Also, if you are doing a lot of downhill running, make sure that your shoes are fitting really, really well because your toe box is going to be, your toes are going to be hitting those toe boxes really, really hard. I know that we've done marathons before, Tim, where the first 30 Ks was uphills, the last 12 was downhill. And so obviously that last 12 was a very steep downhill, and my toenails, I don't think, have ever recovered from that because my shoes were the normal size shoes. So I learnt the hard way to make sure that, your toe box and your shoes, especially if you're doing a lot of downhill running, to make sure that you do that. And building up quads. Quads are really important for downhill running. So if you're going to do downhills, have really strong quads. Quads are really important for your downhill running, and that stops any injuries. It actually, a lot of people sit there and go, oh, I can't go to the toilet after running. It's usually because your quads aren't strong enough. So make sure if you are doing a lot of downhill running to strengthen those quads a lot. Yeah, and make sure it's a midfoot strike rather than a heel stroke or a toe strike. Then you've got the balance that you need.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. Tony?
I think it's all been said. Basically, I enjoy downhills because it gives me a chance to relax. And I think that's really, really important. When I'm going, we'll get to uphills, but there's certain things I do when I'm going uphill. But, it's interesting, Tara just spoke about the foot strike because I've been guilty in the past of going too fast downhill and then having to more or less put the brakes on and start the heel strike just to slow down that momentum. And that's not where you want to be because the heavier your foot lands, the more jarring you get right through your body. So I think it's the biggest tip that I would give anyone is just to relax. It's not about catching up and suddenly becoming Superman running down a hill and picking up a minute or two per kilometer. It really is about flowing with the course, but doing it in a way that's natural. So relax yourself, engage your core, and don't heel strike unless suddenly you are going too fast and you've got to do something to slow yourself down, but you shouldn't be in that position. So just relax, allow the flow to happen, and just maintain your balance and your core stability, and you should be right. You come out of it with a big smile on your face and say, let's do that again.
Also, I think for me, probably the two biggest tips that I always try and incorporate in my training is always train when you can on different types of hill, whether it be a short incline, a steeper incline, and going to come across different types of hill/inclines on your races. So always incorporate those into your training because you're going to benefit so much from it. It's kind of like when we say train on different types of surfaces, whether if you can train on grass or on road, and the same applies for hills. So that way your body gets used to it. And I think something that sometimes people may not necessarily think about too much is don't look completely down when you're running, just look slightly ahead. And so that way you can keep an eye out as to what's coming up in the next, 3-4 meters as such, because if you're just focused on what's in front of you and you're looking straight down, that's when accidents potentially may happen. You may fall, and that's the last thing we want. So I think for me, it's those two. Don't lean down, just look slightly ahead and train on different types of hills.
Yep. And the other thing, Lucia, as well, is if you are running hills or down hills, use your arms to balance yourself. You can push them out to the side a little bit. I tend to flatten my arms down and almost push my palms down to the ground to just give me a little bit more balance as I'm running down hills, particularly steep hills, and particularly on trails where there's a little bit of unevenness underfoot. So the arms are really useful as a tool to help balance. And yes, Tara, you talked about quads before, but it's also your core strength as well comes into all, particularly up and down hills, and getting that right core strength really helps.
Yeah, glutes are another really big important thing for going up a hill. That's your up muscle, as Kay Mass, who was on one of our previous episodes, would like to call it. The up muscles are really important. So your glutes, make sure you activate your glutes. So there's a difference between actually running and strengthening your glutes and then making sure your glutes are activated. So if you don't know how to activate your glutes, I highly recommend seeing a sports podiatrist, sports physio, or doing some YouTube look out for that. But things like your Bulgarian split squats, just squats in general, lunges, things like that, that will help activate the glutes. And by making sure that you're doing both sides, if one glute isn't working as well as the other, you're going to end up with hip and back pain as well. So really important to activate and train those muscles that are needed for downhill running. Obviously, they're good for your uphills as well. So, yep.
Excellent. Thanks, guys. So now we've touched on the downhill. I think now we need to turn our time to Tim's favourite part, running uphill. So what are your key tips and tricks to help our listeners to get up over those hills easier?
Okay, so for me, the first bit is a positive mindset, right? If you're going to let the hill defeat you in your mind, you're never going to get up it, right? So you need to be positive about hills. You need to be thinking positively, and you need to say, I can do this. The second part for me is technique. For me, I was sort of taught a little while ago or listened to other people when they talked about running up hills. It's about shortening your stride right down and almost getting into almost running like on your toes and digging your toes in as you're running in very short strides. But the thing that controls your legs is your actual arms. And if you swing your arms, your legs will follow. Try running without your arms, and it's very difficult. But if you start swinging your arms in very short little motions, like little punches out in front of you, or sometimes I even think of it like I've got ski poles and I'm trying to pull myself up the hill with the ski poles, that then means the legs will follow. The other tip to technique is to keep your head up. Don't look down, keep up. It allows the air into your lungs, but it also gives you a sense of positivity. I guess you get to see where the crest of the hill is. And to be honest, a lot of the hills that we run on in a lot of the races we do are no more than 2 or 3 meters in elevation, maybe 5 meters in elevation. And so I sit there and I'm almost, I'm 190 centimeters, almost 6'4" or so. So if I can stand there and my eyes are almost level with the crest of the hill, and that crest of the hill might be 100 meters in front, I'm going, well, it's only my height over that distance. I can run my height up. That's not hard. And again, using that positive mindset to look at it. Obviously, if it's bigger and bigger than that, then, sometimes I'm looking at it as how many times my height is it to get to the top. And I'm thinking that way as well. But yeah, short strides, keep your head up, breathe, have a positive mindset. Try to maintain just a steady cadence as well. Don't go too over the top. You're not going to have the same cadence necessarily going up the hill as you would going down the other side. But it's about finding a rhythm. And you find that you get more into the rhythm with your arms and your legs than you do worrying about how big the hill is in front of you. Again, the other thing for me is breathing. I mentioned it before. If you keep your head up, you get the breathing in. So I do try to focus on the breathing, taking in some deep breaths, letting it out, trying to control my breathing, regulate it as best I can so that I'm not breathing in shortly, because if you're breathing in short breaths, you're not getting much oxygen in there, which means you're going to fatigue a little bit quicker. So they're sort of my tips, if that makes sense, for running up a hill. Does that make sense?
Yep. Thanks, Tim. Tara, what about you? Oh, sorry, Tony.
I think Tim just covered just about everything there. So
I think you definitely have to make sure you're relaxed as well going up a hill. If you're too tense and your shoulders are up here around your neck and you're like, you're not going to, and for those that can't see me on video, think of like pulling yourself without a neck. Make sure your neck is down. So I always like thinking of shoulders back, down, and relaxed when I'm running. I know that this sounds really, really weird, but the way that we taught our son how to run hills is a thing called torf. Now, this is not an official way of anything, but it's really tits out, run fast. So make sure that your chest is up and out, and you're going to run faster naturally. So if you think of torf as you're running up a hill, you're going to be better, because then you're not slouched over, your shoulders aren't crouched over top of yourself, and you're getting that oxygen into your body, which is what you do need. Don't overstride up a hill. Don't run up a hill at the fastest pace you can and overstride it, because you're going to end up with things like shin splints. You're not going to be able to get into the toes and use the most out of your body to get the strength out of your body to get up the hill. Overstriding is actually going to make you slower. So bring your cadence down, a bit like running down a hill. Just bring that cadence to a smaller steps and run up that way. And it's okay to walk up hills. Don't ever think that it's not okay to walk up a hill. Everyone who wants to run up a hill usually does it if they're a professional, or they're actually really, really good at running up hills like Tim. But if you want to walk up a hill, there's nothing wrong with that at all, and I do it frequently. So
it was interesting on the latest edition of the Long Run podcast. They were talking about hill running, and Jakob Ingebrigtsen, 1,500 meter champion, during his long runs, he will walk a hill. So because it's not his forte, his middle distance, his speed. So to him, the hill plays no additional part to his training. So he walks it. So apparently, allegedly, as outlined on that particular podcast. The biggest thing for me and for going up hills, and I always think there's two different types of hills. There's the hill that you see, and then the hill that you often don't see, because it's a steady incline. And so I'm going to talk about the hill that you see, because sometimes you can be 400 or 500 meters into a steady incline and then suddenly realize you're on a steady incline. So, but the hill that you see is really, for me, a little bit of mindset. I set myself at the bottom of the hill or coming into the hill. I don't necessarily say I can do this, but I'm telling myself, remember what to do. And it's a little bit of leaning forward, using the arms. That's my focus every single time. Whenever I feel my form disappears, I focus on my arms, because by doing that, I get my form back to a degree. And I do that whenever I hit a hill. So Sharon and I don't like up hills. However, in saying that, we have now we've got a hill on our training track near the where we run in Cleveland, and we will now tack that hill towards the end of the long run to make sure, and then aim to get up there. And then every time we get up there and we get up the crest, it's how far you can get then past the crest. So it's really quite interesting. The mindset around hill running is really about challenging yourself. But for me, it's all about leaning forward, getting my arms working, and just that little bit of gusto down the bottom that says, let's get this done. Because I'm an impatient person like a lot of people. So I just want to get it done. And if I'm walking up it, it's going to take longer. So I want to get up there, but I want to make sure that I've got my my form to get up there.
I guess the other thing is, as well, is if you really want to get better at uphill running, the best thing that you can do is practice uphill running. And I know that is the age-old story, isn't it? But hill intervals or hill sprints are really, really handy at learning how to run up a hill. I know at our old house we used to live at the top of a hill on a cul-de-sac. We would walk down the hill and then sprint it back up, walk down, and we would do 10 of those each night, just to practice our hill sprints. And now, look, that was, pre-kids and a lot younger, where we could do 10 of those in a time because they were 200-meter sprints. But pick what suits you. And if you can do, say, 3 50-meter hill sprints, build that up. Keep using the same hill, but just build it up to say, 5, I can do 5 now. And that's the best way that you're going to practice hills and be able to conquer hills, is by actually doing them and learning your own techniques. And again, different hills for different reasons. So practice on grass, practice on trails, practice on roads. But if you want to get better at hills, just keep doing hills and strength work, really.
No,
Yeah,
definitely.
light posts and driveways are the tip, aren't they, Tara?
Yep.
You aim for a certain driveway or a certain light pole, and if you can get to that, then you aim for the next driveway or the next light pole, and before you know it, you can run up that hill after doing it a number of times. And I agree with you, Tony. It's about going beyond the crest as well. Once you conquer the hill, you've got to be able to keep running. You've got to be able to run on those jelly legs, because they are jelly at the end of the day once you got up the top of a hill. And it's about being able to continue to run on those jelly legs until you can clear that lactic acid out of your legs within the next sort of couple of minutes. So, yeah, it comes with training and practice.
Great. I think for me, in which probably my bigger tips would be, like one of them's been mentioned already, but using your arms for power, because it just makes such a difference. Like when we do our run club on a Thursday, there's this, 2 of the hills we train on sometimes. I know as soon as I get my arms going, I hate the hill, hate it. But as soon as I get my arm going, I find I get that extra oomph of power. And Tim, as you said before, it helps you to keep form as well. It's amazing that once I actually tried putting my arms down, my running going up that hill just didn't work. And one thing we also do is, if we know if our hill session is going to be a tougher hill session, we actually warm up our ankles and feet and stretch those, just to make sure we aren't putting too much impact, and making sure, and try to prevent injury as well. So if you're doing any type of hill work, or especially if it's going to be intense hill work, as part of your warm up, do some ankle raises, some calf raises, just to get the body ready.
Yeah, I agree.
So hopefully that's given everyone some insider tips to help them conquer the up and the downhill. Now, unfortunately, the episode's coming to an end shortly. But before we do, the part that everyone always looks forward to is the tip from Tim. So what's your tip this week, Tim?
Thanks, Lucia. My tip this week is that nothing ever comes easy. And whether it's running up hills or down hills, it just doesn't come easy unless you're some sort of freak out there, right? Even the elites have to practice and train running up and down hills to become better at it. So whether or not you're running up or down hills or trying to improve your distance on long runs, it really only does come from consistency of effort. It comes from turning up every day, day after day, week after week, and putting in the effort. You're never going to improve if you don't go out there and try running on a hill, for instance. You're never going to improve running on hills if you don't go out there and train running on hills. So you need to make sure you put the time in, the effort, the consistency, practice in order to get better at these things. And that's what I think we've all been saying, is it does. No one's an expert on any of this stuff with hill running, but it gets easier and better the more effort you put into it and the more you practice it. So that's my tip this week. Get out there and practice.
Excellent. Thanks, Tim. So just before the episode does come to an end, Tara, what's on for next week?
Excellent. So thanks, Lucia. Way back on episode number 59, we talked about our bucket list marathons around the world. And if you recall, we spoke about our bucket list events. However, we really only touched the iceberg, the tip of the iceberg on that one. So we have got so many other great events that we would like to talk about. So we're going to discuss all of those. Well, not all of them because there's too many, but we're going to discuss as many as we can next week. So it'll be an episode you shouldn't miss. It's going to be really, really good.
Excellent. Thanks, Tara. So unfortunately, this ends what has been another awesome show. Guys, as usual, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I hope you have a good week of running. So see you next week.
Thanks, Lucia.
Now, guys, we also love recording these podcasts for you, our wonderful listeners. We love hearing your feedback. So please like the episode wherever you are listening to it, and leave some comments, or send us a message via our social media pages on Instagram, Facebook, and Messenger, or via our email address, which is happyrunning@flyingrunner.com. Make sure, maybe share with us any tips you have for running up or down hills. Video of this episode will be available at Spotify and YouTube, and audio will be on Apple and Amazon and most other popular podcast platforms. And remember, every step forward is a victory. Lace up, hit the road, and we'll catch you on the next episode of The Flying Runner. Until then, happy running.
Happy
Happy
running.
running.
Running.